Maria, and good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is well and happy wherever you are in the UK or around the world. Thank you for joining us. My name is Paul Webster, and I am the Subject Advisor for Pearson's Drama and Performing Arts qualifications, and I'll be leading the session today, which is all for GCSE drama. And it's our start the year event, so we will be covering lots of different things today, looking back, looking forward, planning for the future, and working together. So thank you very much for joining us. And also joining us today is Liz Slade, and Liz is the Senior Product Manager for Drama and English. Here's what we're going to look at. We're going to reflect on the summer exam series and last year and what everybody experienced, what we went through, and then we're going to look at key events and up-to-date information for this new academic year. We've got some important news for UK and international centres to share with you, and we're also going to have that opportunity to share ideas and resources and approaches to teaching the three components. And we welcome your contributions there. We'll have a Q&A in which we can talk about these things and give you the opportunity to ask anything that you'd like to. And yeah, so we hope that this event is useful for you. At the moment, I would say, if it's okay, not to put any questions into the chat box, just because we've got a lot to get through and it may be worth saving them up for later. Hopefully we've considered everything that you might be thinking about. But if you do type it in, if you do put something into the chat box, then please just make it available for everyone if it's something that's a general question that people might want to know about. And so with that in mind, let's get on with a little survey first of all. And this is to find out just a little bit about you, to make sure that we are all just full of, like, really just understanding who you are, how long you've been teaching the qualification, our particular GCSE drama, and whereabouts you are, so whether you are UK or international. So you should now see the poll on your screen. So if you're okay to just complete those two questions, please, that'd be lovely. So let us know how long you've been teaching for and whereabouts you're based. And there should be about, I think there's about 40 of us at the moment in the room. We may be expecting a few more. I can see everybody just remembering how long they've been teaching our particular version for. We might have some newly qualified teachers. We might have some people who have been running this course for quite a long time, and looking at those results so far, we've got a nice spread there. So just give you a couple more seconds to have a think. And then we will share the results. So I think I might draw that to a conclusion now. And let's have a look. So we can see that quite a few teachers are new to teaching our version of specification. That might be that you've come from another awarding body, and if so, hello and welcome. And it might be that you're brand new to teaching. So again, thank you, and thank you for joining us today. And we hope that for those who have been teaching it for a while, because we've got quite a few who have been doing it for at least 4 years, that we'll be able to share experiences and tips on how to teach and assess the components. For those of you who want to know, we will be sending you a copy of the presentation that we're going to use, and also a recording in the next few days, so don't worry if you have to leave early. And thank you for putting about whether you're UK or international. So it's almost a third are from international centres. So welcome wherever you are, and thank you, and hope that you can get all the information today that you need in order to run the course this year. So lovely, thank you very much. So let's now have a look back on how it went last year. And it may be that you were teaching the course last year and this will be useful for you, but also that if you've never taught it before, it's good to kind of get an overview really of how the course ran and what worked and what didn't. So we'll begin first of all with component 1, and that is devising. And you'll see that I've put a link there to the principal moderator feedback. So after each exam series, the lead moderator and the lead examiner for the particular component will create a document which provides an overview of how the whole cohort have done, so every centre and what the findings have been. And for those who did it last year, it was a fascinating time because it's the only time in the series when students didn't have to work as part of a group. They were able to do monologue or duologue, devise work and performances. So on the screen, I've just included some of the highlights really from the principal moderator's feedback, including the types of stimuli that were used, and that these are across the board. So some were taken from books and from magazines and articles. You can't use an actual play in this, but you can use other forms of literature. Some use music, some use video and recordings from films. Some used images, some used poems. Some went down the road of using a single word, such as persecution, inequality, or terror. And what we found was that sometimes it's really useful to have that word, but it may be that it's allowing students to do research is quite fundamental for this component. So ensuring that students have that opportunity is going to be really useful. So if you are going to give them a word, allowing that opportunity where they can do some more work. And news reports were well, in terms of where we were, in terms of the pandemic and how it impacted on young people, that quite a few centres use news reports about that. We found that less effective topics included things that students couldn't necessarily relate to or they felt uncomfortable with. So kind of violence and physical assaults and things like that might be something that's worth avoiding for the future. Something else to consider is when students move away from their initial intention that they had, that sometimes the performance work and also the portfolio can lack structure and direction. So something to think about there. And in terms of themes, well, ones that kept cropping up were about war and conflict, mental health issues, madness, PTSD, different types of inequality, the role of being an outsider, things about rights, things about the impact of technology and social media, and the impact of COVID and diseases and the pandemic. So a whole range there of themes that students investigated. In terms of how the overall advice that we would give in terms of component 1 is that wherever possible, students should ensure that the work is carefully rehearsed and polished. So not necessarily that the final performance is just the next step in the devising, that actually they've created the work and they've had that chance to actually rehearse it and perform it with a script, so to speak. And that they you know, there's the opportunity for students to fully engage with their role and thinking about how their role impacts on the work as a whole, that they have that opportunity to work collaboratively and contribute throughout to exploration, refinement and rehearsal. And that, you know, obviously there are some students who are, you know, more vocal than others, but how one might manage that within the group, and so I suppose kind of managing voices and that opportunity for everybody to have a say. Shaping and developing ideas practically rather than repeating and polishing without progression. Obviously, that's going to be an incredibly useful thing. So maybe as part of the teaching and learning, that students have that opportunity to understand that things can continue to grow and progress, and they don't need to just go with the first idea. Sharing the, oh, sorry, I've flipped forward there too many times. Sharing their work through the process is also going to be an incredibly useful thing to get improvement, because having peer feedback can be really useful. Using the research skills to inform performance and development of ideas. Making clear notes through the process can, of course, be really useful in terms of capturing what they've done for their evaluation, for their portfolio, because obviously the portfolio is worth 75% of the marks. And finally, reflecting on the final performance as soon as possible after it's taken place, rather than having an extended period where before they get to do it. So I would suggest that if you haven't had the chance to look at principal moderator feedback, you have a look at it, because there is loads of really useful stuff in there, and I'm really just giving a flavour now. But that we suggest that the 6 questions are covered and really made explicit within the portfolio, and to make full use of the word count and timings if they're doing a verbal feedback, in order to allow for the detail of analysis required and the comprehensive explanations needed to access the higher marks, but not to exceed the maximum word count or timings just because they won't be considered in the final assessment. Ensure that health and safety considerations are woven into the working practices and the portfolio evidence. Avoid general discussion, really, and ensure that they analyse and evaluate across the whole of the portfolio. So also using drama terminology, sorry, about explaining and analysing the drama that took place. Staying focused on their particular performance or design skill. When it comes to question 2, discussing the exploration of the stimuli material that took place in the studio, using, you know, explorative strategies such as still images, hot seating, thought tracking, etc. For question 4, ensuring that all the areas are discussed in terms of characterization, genre, style, form, structure, and language. If you need any clarification on those, we have some in the specification. We also have another document on the website, which is like a companion to the specification, which has lots of definitions in the Getting Started guide. But if you are in any, if you don't know, then just feel free to contact me. Ensuring that in question 5 and 6 that the students stay focused on their skill in the final performance rather than focusing on the process, and that students should analyse and evaluate how their skill contributed to the final performance, and using the first person, use of first person in their language is supportive in responding to this question. In component 2, again, it was the only time where it's just been one performance instead of 2 extracts, and there are some things to consider. I mean, in the principal examiner feedback, there's a huge amount of examples of plays that were used this year. So you can see here popular monologue extracts from a whole range of contemporary works, like 100 Words for Snow, Alice, 448 Psychosis, Lemons, etc. But then some kind of canonical classic pieces as well, things from the late 20th century. So a huge range there. And then popular duologues from, the most popular plays at this level: Blood Brothers, Bouncers, Shakers, Teachers. And then some really interesting choices in terms of the duologues across male and female as well. So really, if you're looking for ideas around plays to use, if you're looking for new things, then have a look at this report, because there's some great ideas. The principal examiner suggests that the most straightforward process for working out how to assign extracts to students is to create a variety of extracts from the preferred text and maybe putting them into a group of 4 or a monologue, or here's female monologues and here's male monologues, and then grouping and casting the students into the chosen extracts rather than trying to do it the other way around, just because you might end up kind of having to shoehorn and not necessarily finding something that will fit the number of students. So and there's also things around kind of multi-rolling if the role wasn't written to multi-role in the first place. So sometimes multi-rolling, where it is just taking a number of different characters, can be at the detriment of the students. So again, it's just something to worth considering there. We found that monologues were the most popular choice in 22, closely followed by duologues, and then groups last of all. I think probably because of what was happening within centres, and it was just the easiest and most manageable thing to do. Of course, monologues and duologues are absolutely fine moving forward for this year. They always have been. And in the stronger monologues, students had a clear understanding of the overall extract and the text and its context. And that good monologues, students used the space well and expressed a range of emotions using a full range of vocal and physical skills. And again, for the duologues, the most successful ones are where they communicated a sense of a relationship in considerable depth. There was a whole range of styles, non-naturalistic to really naturalistic works, but they were all successful. There wasn't a particular kind of stronger example that, it seemed to be that students do, can really get into this unit and the requirements. So in terms of intention of communication, that is something that students have to do, and they have to submit details of the motivations of the character intention, examples and details of physicality and vocal skill and what they'll be doing, and a clear understanding of the context of the chosen extract. So it may be that the most successful ones are where students linked the performance skills to specific lines or moments in the work. Now, you probably know this, but in the intention of communication isn't an assessed document, but it does relate to how the students will be assessed by the examiner. So in terms of group work, the most popular texts were probably plays that you're all very familiar with. And the Girls Like That was and a play called Numbers by Kieran Barry. They were the most popular plays for groups of 3 to 4. And then the plays were used with designers, with design candidates for costume, set, lighting, sound. These are the ones whereby students that did work, and they did some good work as well. So Alice by Laura Wade, Blood Brothers, the old favourite, Too Much Punch for Judy, Silence and Waiting for Godot. That's an unusual one, but some good design work came through there. The principal examiner said that the high scoring work included committed performances, assured and comprehensive characterization, sustained confidence and understanding of the role with control and sense of security and ease rather than just rehearsed action, that communication was consistent, and which led to, and that's either with, with the audience, the examiner, or with other performers, so that it results in an engaging performance, and that the choice of text was appropriate as well, which can't really be underestimated. And students who may not have done as well, some of the characteristics included not knowing lines securely or holding a script, very short performances, a lack of stage time or exposure on stage, a lack of self-belief of maybe going through the motions, limited like vocal modulation, little or no movement, a lack of confidence in the work that they're doing, a loss of focus, resulting in corpsing or lost character, and a lack of projection and a sense of self-confidence really in what they're doing. There's a couple of comments in here about plays for boys. Oh, well, as we go through this, if anybody does have any suggestions about good plays that they've used for boys, please share them in the chat. I was just thinking of the Laura Wade play, Posh, which in line with our current government is always going to be relevant. So that's something to consider, but it may be that there are other colleagues on here who have got some good ideas for plays for boys. Joe has said about Accidental Death of an Anarchist, a great choice, and that's good to hear about your students doing well. In terms of the marking of component 2, it used to be something that we did in terms of we did release the examiner marks, but we no longer do that. So the last time we did it was in 2019. And Dunwaiter, yeah, great suggestion there. That's a great two-hander. And yes, now that's a good question from about Dr. Korczak, Zawina. Yes, and yes, that could be used. Thank you, Claudia, as well, for Lord of the Flies. Great suggestion there. Looking at designers, some obvious points here, but worth pointing out around students having ownership of their designs, and it's obviously a positive choice for them to do design. They've been integral to the preparation and artistic interpretation. They had demonstrated imagination and detail in the completion of the design, that in terms of lighting and sound, it was detailed, it was subtle, that costume showed creative approaches to character enhancement, and that Sept added something extra to the performance. So it's Sept was probably the least examples of that this year. Again, I think because of the difficulties with being within centres, and then less successful students for component 2, there seemed to be a last-minute quality to the design being presented, that there was a lack of detail, there was a lack of reflecting kind of social and historical context, that some text choices, the ones that they were working with performers, didn't necessarily need sound, for example. It just wasn't part of it, so that then the opportunities for the student to design sound were really limited. And on we go with, in terms of even the connection to the intention of communication didn't really show what they were doing effectively. So moving on now to component 3. This was the first time that the exam paper itself had been split into 2 sections, and that you would only get the section that was relevant to the list that you were doing, the set text that you'd taken from that list. So it did cause a couple of issues within most centres, but from the feedback that we've had so far, it went down well because there is just less for the students to have to wade through. For section A, the most popular texts in list A were An Inspector Calls and The Crucible, and the most popular texts for list B were DNA and 100. And in the principal examiner report, there's basically examples of student responses for each question for each set text in both lists, apart from Gone Too Far, Free Night and Antigone, because no students used them. Obviously, we only introduced them in June 21, so there's some centres who did actually use A Doll's House. But if you are looking for examples of responses, further responses, please have a look at the principal examiner report, because they're really good. In terms of the live theatre evaluation, the majority of responses, quite understandably, were in reference to recorded productions or stream productions, rather than students being able to get out. So the most popular choices were Frankenstein, Small Island, Yerma, Streetcar and Ocean at the End of the Lane. And I think that they're nearly all are through the NT collection, which is of course free for UK centres. So again, the principal examiner report contains examples of student responses and feedback on the marks awarded. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the responses for every single set text, because as I said, there are 9 to go through. So what I would suggest is have a look at the report, because there are some really useful tips there in terms of the specific play, the specific set text that you're looking at. Learner work transfer was something that we introduced last year, and it worked okay for some people. It was a bit of a nightmare for others. And the positives included the fact that it was easy to access and it was all in one place. It's all through Edexcel Online. It's pretty straightforward, and it's less risky than using a postal system. But there were a number of things to work on. And so if you did have a difficult experience with LWT, I can only apologise for that, but we are working on ensuring that would never happen again. So some of the issues might have been around the time that it took to upload the materials, that there were too many guidance documents available, and that there was a requirement for clearer instructions if you encountered any issues, and correspondence with either your moderator or examiner. So we have put in a number of things to ensure that you have a smoother experience this year, including the time it will take to upload the materials. That shouldn't be an issue anymore. It will be minimal time. We've cut back on our guidance documents, and we've ensured that the instructions are clear, which I will explain to you in a moment. So just before we move away from last year, just to remind you that there are a number of services available to you if you would like, if you or your students are unhappy with any of the marks, or there's anything that you'd like to query. So this process is open for the next few weeks, and you can also request reviews of individual students. If they change in a positive way, if something comes back, then you won't be charged for it. In terms of Results Plus, if you haven't used it, it's really useful in terms of a breakdown of, oh, sorry, I flipped forward again. In terms of a breakdown of your students' performances in the external units. We also have guidance around if you're concerned about marking of the whole cohort. So if you think that all your students have been affected in some way, that you should submit requests for those who are those that you're worried about, and then we'll take a holistic view of the quality of the marking, and that would allow us to sort anything out. And there's also an appeals process if you've gone through the reviews and you are still unhappy or dissatisfied with it. So, or it may be to do with special consideration or access arrangement requests and things. So there's an appeals process. I can see that there's been a question around when the deadline is. So yeah, it's the 29th of September. Thank you for that, Liz. And we'll get on to your question in a moment, Steph, about recorded productions. And Catherine, and you are asking about a lower mark than you thought. So I would suggest that, and yes, and we don't have the marks anymore on, we don't have the comments anymore on the mark sheets. So I would suggest that the review is the best way to do it, because it's conducted by a member of the senior team. And as part of that review, there is a possible process of being able to get more information as to why the mark stays the same or the mark is adjusted. So I would pursue that particular road. Moving on now to this year. And there are a few bits of information here that you need to know about. If you have year 10 students, just so that you know that no entries are required. You don't need to tell us anything about whether or not you've got year 10 students. Of course, I'd love to know, and I'm very happy to help you if you have any questions, but you don't need to make any official entries. In most centres, component 1 is completed in the spring and summer terms. And by that, I mean that the students have learned about devising, and then they will do the work and it will be assessed by the teacher. There are some centres who will be doing it this term in year 11, but as I said, the majority will do it in the spring and summer terms. If you have year 11 students, the first kind of official deadline will be to submit the details of the text that you will be using for components 2 and 3, and you will do that on our website. And in a moment, I will show you whereabouts on the website you need to do that. The exam entries deadline, and that's for all 3 components, is the 21st of February if you are in a UK centre. If you are in an international centre, the entry deadline is the 21st of March. For component 1, we have we've slimlined the forms to use, and those forms are available now on the GCSE drama webpage, so you can use those. The submission for samples that you're going to submit to your moderator, the window will open on the 15th of April and it will close on the 15th of May, and you will submit all the work digitally via the learner work transfer system, which is available through Edexcel Online. Now, component 2, we have got something we'd like to ask you now about component 2. Last year, obviously, it was shifted because of COVID and giving centres more time to apply. We've encountered a few issues this year that we around when component 2 will be, and if you would like a visiting examiner. So I'm going to talk first of all about international centres. If you're an international centre, there won't be the opportunity for a visiting examiner this year. It will just be that you will record the work and it will be submitted to an examiner to be assessed digitally. If you are based in the UK, there will be the option of either requesting a visiting examiner or to submit the work digitally. But depending on when you want to do it is when there will be the availability of the visiting examiner. Now, due to issues out of our control, if you wanted a visiting examiner in January, that might not be possible. It might only be possible to have a visiting examiner in in February and March and into April. So what we'd like to do now is I'd just like to share a poll with you, and it's really to just find out what you're planning to do, whether you're planning to have a visiting examiner or whether you're going to record the work, and when you would like the performances to take place. So I'll just show you the poll now. Obviously, if you're an international centre, then you don't have that option of the visit or not. So if you wouldn't mind just putting to record, but if you could state when you would like to do the assessment for component 2, January, February, March or April. We are expecting that the majority of you are probably going to want to have a visiting examiner if you can have one, but it would just be great to just capture your thoughts on this now, please. So if you wouldn't mind just filling that in, that would be lovely. Whilst you're doing this, what we will do is we'll send a survey to all centres in November. And this survey will clarify whether you want to do a visit or whether you want to do the recording, and it will clarify the rules around when you'll be able to get a visiting examiner and when you and which month, which potential weeks or dates, if you can even state that at that stage, you would like to go with. The reason why is because it's not going to be possible to allocate examiners, visiting examiners in January. It's only going to be possible to do it from February. So we still want to offer like a similar window in terms of time, but we're just not going to be able to do it in January. So we're having the January as an option if you want to record. So that's the reason why, and it's just out of our control, unfortunately. This is the only way that we can do it. So it looks like everybody has now put their details in. I'll just give you another minute if that's okay, just to do it. So yes, so you will be able to do the recording at any point during this window. It's just that if you did want a visiting examiner and you can't have one in January, that you would do the recording instead then, but you can basically do it at any point. So Laura, it's international is going to be digital only this year. And what we're trying to do now is ascertain the fairest possible way to do this. So if you do record that, we'd ask you to kind of timestamp it for when it would be submitted to us. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to end that poll now because it looks like everybody has put the details in. If we just share it, it looks like the majority of you will be doing the visiting examiner, and based on the numbers before about recording work, I would say that all of our international colleagues have put that down. That there's the majority are looking like they will do February into March. So thank you very much for doing that. We don't really want to delay in terms of releasing this information for much longer. So hopefully by the end of the week, we will release the admin support guide with all this information in it, but we're just kind of working now to get everything sorted. So apologies if this feels a little bit ambiguous at the moment, but we're just trying to get to a position where we've got all the right information. In terms of component 3, 15th of May potentially is the date in the afternoon, but that's still to be confirmed. And in regards to the opportunity, and someone asked this earlier about it will be possible to for students to either refer to live work or streamed recorded work in component 3 this year. Now we're still waiting for Ofqual to officially confirm this, but we do also understand that you need to be getting on with things. So I think it's probably safest to plan ahead, that students will be able to do either option. Yes, that's, oh yes, sorry, where I've stated on here where it says about performance text practitioner and live submission deadline, that's my mistake. There is no requirement to do practitioner. That word slipped in, so apologies for that. It's just performance text and practitioner. And speaking of which, this is what it will look like. This is what it looks like on the GCSE drama qualification page. So with where I've put all those arrows, that's where you submit your performance tech choices and your live performance statement. Now, the statement now is around that basically at some point on the course, the students will have seen live theatre, but for the purposes of component 3, they can either refer to the live production that they saw or a streamed production. This brings us in line with what the other exam boards also do. This page on the website has all the documentation and guidance that you need. And as I said, the admin support guide isn't on there yet, but it will be by the end of the week. So it will show admin support guide as a tab as well. So there's the new forms for component 1. We've reduced the number of forms for component 2, and in component 3 is the live theatre evaluation front sheet. Okay, so that's a lot of information. I hope that you're all coping with that. I'd now like to open it up to you, and if there are any resources that you would like to recommend to others, if there's anything that you have that's tried and tested, any ideas on what you're going to be doing this year that you'd like to share with others, or if there's anything that you're actually looking for or that you need. So please feel free at this point to put any ideas that you have into the chat box, and we can also as well invite you to come off mic. So if you want to raise your hand, or if you have any questions, then please do so. What I was going to show you at this point were just some ideas around things that you might be interested in, that you may know about or not. And the first one is these two publications. So we've got the Drama Teacher's Survival Guide by Matthew Nichols, which can be really useful in terms of navigating the content of how you plan the course that you're going to teach, but also in terms of like helping like best support students and answer maybe skeptical questions that you might have from parents or senior leadership, like kind of justifying why drama is so important, why going to seeing live work is important. But he's also got ideas in there on how to engage with contemporary work, how to make informed choices about increasing representation in terms of the play that you choose. So if you've not seen this book, it's really useful. And Matthew is a still working teacher who teaches GCSE drama and A-level. The other play which you might, the other book that you might have a look at is this one, A Beginner's Guide to Devising Theatre, and this was written by the artistic directors of Junction 25, which is a company based in Glasgow that do devising for young people aged 11 to 18, and the theatre company Glass Performance. So there's some really useful things in there about building and maintaining a group dynamic, lots of exercises and methods of responding to a range of stimuli. So if you aren't aware of either, maybe check them out. Some questions have come in about DNA and what they can see at the theatre for the live review. So students can see anything. They can't see a set text, don't do a sung through musical, but in terms of style and you can, there's not the same contrast that there is with your choices for component 2. So I would just say, again, just trying to give them a whole range of work to look at. You can show them many things, and there's quite a lot of musicals that you could show them as well, because the majority do have spoken dialogue in them. Becky's asked about for those teaching the Crucible and about the context. So if anybody does have any ideas on that, please feel free to share them. Catherine has asked about additional training. So we have got 2 training events coming up later this term. One is for component 1 and one is for component 2. They are both happening in November. So if you want to find the details, if you go onto our website, there is a training for, there's a training section at the top, on the top band. And if you just have a look for drama in the live field, then the 2 drama events will be coming up. Maria's asked about an in-person standardization meeting. That would be delightful and a good idea, and it's not going to happen this term, but I think moving forward it's something that we'd really like to bring back again, because there are so many benefits about having face-to-face meetings. And so for the moment within the program, so those 2 sessions that I mentioned, they are online, but we would, it would be great if we could do some face-to-face ones again. So that could potentially be for the summer term. I'm moving into the autumn term next year. Laura is asking about delivering C2 and find it challenging to find pre-2000 plays with 2 extracts that meets the spec requirements. So is there a resource which provides potential extracts that could be used? There are some examples. So if anybody does have any to share, please do so. I mean, as I was saying before about in the lead examiner report, the principal examiner report, there are lots of examples in there, because it does depend as well about the numbers of students that you have in the group and whether or not they're going to do monologues, whether they're going to do duologues. So maybe have a look at those first of all. There may be some ideas, Laura, that might help you there, but hopefully that will help, and maybe some others on the group will be able to give you some ideas as well. Jolie, yes, we are going back to 2 pieces for component 2 this year per student. Zoe, is it all right that I only got 2 students for the group work? So for component 2 it is. For component 1, you need to have a minimum of 3. So we give permission to use a non-assessed individual, and it could be another student, it could be a teacher, it could even be someone from outside your centre that does it. But if you want to contact me about that, I can give you some more. And you will submit your text choices on the website, on the qualification page, as I showed you, but only when the students are in year 11. They don't need to do it when they're in year 10. Thank you to Liz for sharing the link to the materials. Victoria has said She Kills Monsters is a great play for young teens. Linda's asked about staging. That's a tricky one. We'll come back to that in a moment. And Daisy has said about her suggestion about where she's going with the work and how to make sure that the students engage effectively with the set text. So if anybody's got any ideas, one thing to consider as well when we're talking through this is that there's a really good Facebook group, and I'll give you the details of that in a moment, that if you're not part of, that's a really good way of sharing ideas and resources. So Daisy's asked for resources on an inspector course, and we've got some set text guides on our website, Daisy, that you might have a look at, which have got ideas on exercises and tasks and things that you could do, and resources. Just before I go through any more questions, just have a look at some more of these resources that I've got here. So I'm sure that you're all aware of what the National Theatre provide, but they do have productions of Twelfth Night and Antigone on there if you are using either for your set text, that just ways of approaching how the plays can be interpreted. And they've got lots of resource packs and rehearsal diaries, which can give, it's all free, and they can give ideas on practically exploring work, ideas on staging, interviews with key theatre makers. For our new 4-set text that we've had out for a year, but this year will be the first time that that more centres have used them. We have got some really good resources, including interviews between the writers and young people, where they kind of dissect and go into a lot of detail about why the work's been written. We've also got the London Theatre Consortium have also got lots of recordings with the key theatre makers involved in the original productions, the writers, the directors, the designers. So these might be, again, useful for you, even if you're not using any of the set text. It's useful to share with your students in terms of understanding how professional theatre makers create their work. If you are using Gone Too Far, for example, there's a production coming up in next year in Stratford, as in the one in London, not in the one in the centre of the country at the Theatre Royal. There's also a film version as well. So just going back to some of the questions that you've raised. Daniel has asked about exemplars of high band performers. So we do have some examples, yeah. So I don't know whether you've had a look in the past training content for coursework that we've got on the website, but there are some really high achieving students, I think, in the 2019-21. So it's worth having a look at that. But Catherine said she's also got some full mark performances. So if you're willing to share, that would be brilliant. Marie has asked about, if anybody would like to actually come off mic, by the way, that's absolutely fine. Just if you want to raise your hand. I mean, I'm just reading through the questions here, but if anyone does want to actually say anything, then please raise your hand and let's do it. Marie has said about an odd number of designers. Can we have only one costume designer per group? So strange, Marie. I've been asked this question about 17, well, that's an exaggeration, but about 3 times today, where teachers have asked if there can be more than one costume designer within a group. And what we need to make sure of, and why we say that there should only be kind of one like design discipline across the 4 in a group, so like one lighting designer, one costume designer, one set, etc., is that when you have more than one doing the same thing, it can be really difficult to ascertain who came up with the ideas and how it worked. So if you have a particular situation that you want to talk about, then please get in touch with me, but otherwise we advise that you stick to the same to that rule, that you'd only have one costume designer per group. Emma, hello, you're new to Edexcel, and she's asked if anyone has anything they use with the Key Stage 3 to build into the GCSE, because her year 11s are still doing another exam board. So if anyone can help Emma with that, that would be lovely. Victoria, students get assessed on vocal skills. Do we take into account strong accents? I think it's more to do with ensuring that if they have really got into the role and the interpretation, that's the key. And we have students with very strong regional accents who can still access the full range of marks, because it's about their interpretation and it's about what they're doing. So it's not about it's not about accent. It's to do with clarity. It's to do with meaning. It's to do with communication modulation. Focus on those. Don't worry at all about them having a particularly strong accent. It's not, it doesn't have to be an issue. So I hope that reassures you. Zoe has said, is there going to be a training event on component 3? We are in line with all qualifications. We only do training events for externally assessed units in the first year of the course, and after that we have to, because this is an off-qual requirement, we have to find other ways to do it. So we have of things like the lead examiner reports, and in some instances we can have more detailed feedback recordings from the principal examiner, but we can't run training events as such. Catherine has given some suggestions there on the Crucible, and Daniel has said about having a group of 7 for component 1, and I know, yeah, the difficulty is that they can't if they're all going to be performers. So I mean, if you can't split them, I suppose the only other way to do it is that you have 1 as in a design role or 2 in a design role. So sorry about that. I realize that time has flown, and we've come to the end, and I hope that we've gone through all of the questions there. If there's anything else that you need, Shana has said wait. I think she's just arrived, so if there's any, we've got a minute. Oh, sorry, yeah, Shana, you said something about SEN students, didn't you? My apologies. Let's go back up. Let's find where it is. Oh no, that was somebody else. I don't know if there's anything in particular. Oh, staging. Oh, right. Okay. Well, the easiest thing to do actually is I can send you a definition, because we have it in the FAQ. If you go onto our FAQ on the website in the exam materials section, the teaching and learning section, there is details of what we define as staging for component 3. So please have a look at that. But if that isn't enough, then feel free to get in touch with me. We will send you a copy of this presentation, everybody. Those are my details. Apologies for my face. You can see there, we've got various ways of contacting me. So as I said, there's the Facebook group. You can contact me through Twitter. We've got a phone number, so if I'm around, I'll take the call. You can also email me and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. But I think that's it. So if there's anything else and I haven't answered or responded, then please get in touch. Please email me and I'll help you as much as I can. But for now, thank you everybody for joining us today. Have wonderful Tuesday evenings wherever you are. Hope you get the chance to relax, and see you all soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.